Today we're going to be looking at the question, did Alfred von Schlieffen cause World War One? Learning intention is to investigate how the Schlieffen Plan caused World War One. Success criteria is to be able to identify the details of the Schlieffen Plan, to explain what happened in August of 1914, and to evaluate whether Alfred von Schlieffen was to blame for World War One. So, here's a quick recap of the events so far. On the 28th of June 1914, the Austrian Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated in Sarajevo, Bosnia, by Serbian terrorist Gavrilo Princip. On the 5th of July, Germany promises Austria any support in any retaliation against Serbia. On the 23rd of July, Austria-Hungary delivers that ultimatum to Serbia, that letter saying to give in to their demands or war. 2 days later, on the 25th of July, Austria-Hungary begins to mobilise their troops. They begin to gather their army together. On the 26th of July, Britain realises the problem that it is starting to build, tries to get the major European countries together to resolve the situation peacefully. France, Italy and Russia agree to do this, but Germany say no. On the 28th of July, as a result of Serbia declining the ultimatum, Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia. The next day, Russia urges Germany restraint, but then begins to partially mobilise their troops. So Russia are saying to Germany, right, let's not get too dramatic, calm down, let's not do anything rash, but at the same time, they're starting to build their army up. Germany warn Russia and also begin to mobilise their troops. The next day, on the 30th of July, Austria bomb Belgrade, the capital of Serbia. The first actual conflict. As a result of this, on the 31st of July, Russia begins full mobilization of their army, and Germany demands that they stop. So, that is where we're up to at the moment. So, today we're going to be looking at what happened in August. So, today we're looking at the Schlieffen Plan. Now, this plan was created back in 1905, so 9 years earlier, by German General Alfred von Schlieffen. It was a military plan which gave instructions to Germany's army on what steps to take in war. The Schlieffen Plan suggested that invading France first, as it would be quicker to get its army together. Then, turn to fight Russia, who had a large army but would be slower. So, because France would be quicker to get their army ready, Germany should attack France first, and then turn around and face Russia. As you can see, the plan involves not going through France, through the border between France and Germany, but instead going round and through Holland and Belgium and Luxembourg instead. That is because, on that blue line you can see there, that is where France's protection is at its strongest. So why was this plan created? Well, due to its position in Europe, one of Germany's main fears was to be attacked from both sides. This fear was made even more likely due to the fact that France and Russia were allies. So Germany is well aware that France is on one side of them and Russia is on their other side. So they know that if they end up in a war with one of them, then both of them are going to attack them from both sides. If Germany did have to fight on both sides, it would have to split up its army, making it much weaker. General Schlieffen's plan then was designed to avoid this. By invading France quickly and then turning attention to Russia, Germany would not need to split up its army. So it could take over France quick, turn around, and then be ready for Russia, is the theory. So, why did that plan make a world war more likely? Well, firstly, the plan relied on Germany attacking first and without warning. So usually, the courtesy is to tell a country that you are going to attack them, declaring war. This plan relied on Germany doing it quickly and surprisingly, because if France were able to be prepared, it would not be able to happen quickly. The Schlieffen Plan also required Germany to attack through Belgium. Now, Belgium was not allied with any of the countries. It was something that is called a neutral country. They were officially a neutral country, which means they take no sides. This neutrality was guaranteed to be protected by Britain. So Britain said to Belgium, We will defend your rights to not get involved in wars. This meant by following the plan, Germany could end up bringing Britain into a war if it chose to defend Belgium. So if Germany decided to attack France through Belgium, that could bring Britain into any war that would happen. So what actually happened in August 1914? Well, on August 1st, 1914, Germany declared war on Russia. 2 days later, it declared war on France. And then, on August the 4th, the German general Helmuth von Moltke ordered the Schlieffen Plan to be carried out. So this plan, which had been developed 9 years earlier in theory, was now about to be put into practice. So, the Schlieffen Plan then. So the idea, get to France, take over France quick, going through Holland and Belgium and Luxembourg. So what actually happened then? So, the Germans began to gather outside Belgium. Around 7 armies with around 1.5 million soldiers were gathered ready to move into Belgium. Now, one of those armies moved into Belgium in order to attack the city of Liege. That city was an important point to get past in order to get into France. Now, this army was expecting the Belgians to be not much of a fight and to surrender quite quickly and easily. As a result of this action, though, Britain, as we looked at earlier, had agreed to protect the Belgians' rights to stay neutral. So when the Germans did this, the British sent an ultimatum to Germany, saying, stay out of Belgium or else, basically. Now you'll remember that Britain was allied with France and Russia, but had decided not to join the war when France and Russia declared entry. So Britain was very unsure, but this moment of Germany entering Belgium put the British over the edge, and the whole idea of joining the war changed overnight from no to yes. Germany ignored the ultimatum, carried on into Belgium, and as a result, Britain declared war on Germany. And there we have the full World War starting to develop. So, follow this day on the August 5th, 1914, was the Battle of Liege, the first main battle, the main conflict of the World War I. Now, the Germans had around 320,000 men, whereas the Belgians had around 35,000 men. However, whilst heavily outnumbered, the Belgians had 12 of these. These are armoured forts. These were lining the river by Liege, and they were very, very well protected. As you can see, there's very little opportunity to hit any people inside, and there was limited explosives that could do damage to those forts back in 1914. So in there, in the forts, would be Belgians with their machine guns, and as the Germans approached, they would just mow them down. So the Germans came up with fierce resistance, which they weren't expecting, and this went on for several days. Until on August 12th, so 7 days later, Germany brought up their big guns, so to speak, their long-range artillery. This one here had a 75-mile range, so it could fire at a target from 75 miles away, which is an impressive distance. Now, remember, the whole Schlieffen Plan idea was to be able to get through Belgium quickly. So the fact that this has already been a week is disastrous for the German army. It took another couple of days, but then eventually, by August 15th, Germany had full control of Liege and the Belgians surrendered. So in total, it took around 10 days in order for that to be completed. So, as a result of the Schlieffen Plan then, Germany has upset Britain and dragged them into the war. They have not been successful in invading France quickly, so they have not been able to get into France, invade it, and then turn back to Russia. So instead of that, they are now facing a war on two sides, as well as Britain as an extra opponent. So they have made things much, much worse. And many historians actually think that from this moment on, Germany were already doomed to defeat in this war, despite the fact that they had probably the best, most professional, most organised and most well-equipped army in the history of the world ever. But the fact is they had too many opponents. So, what you're going to do today. Task 1. I'd like you to describe fully what the Schlieffen Plan was. So include how the plan was supposed to work and include why the plan was created. You are welcome to include diagrams in there to help explain what is going on in that plan. And then your second task, I've got a longer question that I want you to answer. I want you to explain why the Schlieffen Plan made things worse in 1914. So by the end of July, things are already really bad. Europe is in crisis. But how does this plan make things worse in August of 1914? So make sure you're including events. So I want specific dates, specific place names, specific countries, and details of what happened. So I don't want to see this country did this to this country. I want specifics. And then also make sure you explain why that made things worse. So don't just describe how things are worse. Explain fully why. Then I've got a challenge for you to evaluate whether Alfred von Schlieffen was to blame for World War I. So this plan that he devised 9 years early, is that plan, was he to blame for this massive global conflict? So you might want to evaluate both sides of the argument and conclude with your overall opinion there. So there's your task for today. Submit it through Teams as usual, and thank you for watching.